Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast, presented by our friends Exterior Home Solutions. A free estimate. Pick up the phone, call today. It's 865-524-5888 or online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Grant Ramey, Rob Lewis, and Brent Hubbs joining the show today. Got a whole lot of questions to get into, but first, Brent, it's a great time. Loads are going on right now at Volquest.com. Baseball season's right around the corner. We have the ongoing basketball season, the NCAA investigation, football recruiting, football news, spring practice happening in about a month's time right now. It's a great time to join the site over at Volquest.com.
Yeah, a lot of people think February is kind of a slower month, kind of a downtime. It's really not. There's a lot going on campus. Coaches coming off the road, a lot of winter workout stuff. Obviously, getting ready for spring practice. You got a basketball team that's got plenty in front of them to play for, potentially a number one seed, conference championship, tournament championship. Recruiting never stops, as we've seen with all the stuff that Matt and Austin have from over in North Carolina. And then we'll see what happens with the court case in Greenville next week, and we'll see what happens with that moving forward. Pretty interesting time. Quite a bit going on right now. Great time to check us out. Great time to discuss it all in the general's quarters.
Yeah, come join us over on the GQ at Volquest.com. We'll start with Nashville 615. Got a couple here, so we'll move through them pretty quickly. Rob Lewis, if Tennessee is going to make the college football playoff in 2024, what players other than Nico have to break out and have huge years?
Well, I mean, somebody at wide receiver for sure. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can pick somebody. I mean, Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, somebody out there. They don't have to have a Jalen Hyatt Biletnikoff year, but I mean, I think history kind of shows us. I mean, you have 1,000-yard type receiver somewhere at wide receiver. I'll start there, and James Pierce just had a phenomenal. I don't think he has to do anything different. Just kind of be a star off the edge one more time. But those are two that jump out at me. I mean, I'm sure you could pick out 6 or 7, but somebody at wideout for sure, based off what we've seen out of this offense.
Yeah, I'd say get after the passer. So James Pierce, of course, and you need somebody to get behind the defense at receiver, much like Tennessee had the first 2 years under Josh Heupel, and obviously got to run the football well. So those running backs and that offensive line's got to have a good year. When did you guys find out about the NCAA investigation, Brent? Did you hear it in real time, the same as the rest of us, or did you have an inkling before?
Oh, I had an inkling before that they were looking into it. They look into a lot of stuff. Didn't know when anything was going to come out. Didn't know if Tennessee was going to get a notice of allegations. They may not get a notice of allegations. Certainly didn't know it was going to get leaked to the national media by some people from the NCAA for it to be written when it was going to be written. Again, it's not a cover-up by us or anybody else. They look into stuff all the time. Compliance, everything. They turn in secondary violations. They look into different things. They question different things. And most of the time, nothing comes of that. But obviously in this case, the NCAA wanted everybody to know they were looking into Tennessee. I'm not sure, based on where it stands right now, Grant Ramey, that the NCAA really wanted everybody to know that they were digging deep into Tennessee, because it certainly changed that narrative on where things stand, or what things look like right now with the NCAA. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I had an inkling that they were looking into Nico, but you knew they were going to look into him from the day he signed with Tennessee.
Do you think, Hubbs, that the NCAA had any inkling that Tennessee would respond the way Tennessee would respond? Because if they did, and they went forward with, let's get this thing out there, it seems like a huge miscalculation, because not only has Tennessee responded the way they have with the statements they've put out, mincing no words, but it feels like people have gotten, other schools, other fan bases have gotten behind them in this fight kind of against what the NCAA is trying to do here.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but I wonder if the NCAA expected the reaction that they got from Donde Plowman when they had that Monday meeting, where obviously that letter had been generated and had been prepared, but she was pretty fired up and ready to roll following that meeting there. So I mean, I don't know the answer to that. It certainly looks like it's not going the NCAA's way right now. We'll see what the end result ultimately becomes, but it certainly doesn't feel like they've got a whole lot going in their favor in this case. And again, we'll see what right now. It's not the University of Tennessee against the NCAA. It's the state of Tennessee against the NCAA. And that's where it starts from first and foremost. And what comes out of that, we'll have to wait and see. But now I don't know that the NCAA thought it would be that Tennessee, that everybody in the state of Tennessee would be as aggressive in response as they've been.
I was going to say, I would have expected the NCAA to kind of know that Tennessee would push back a little bit, but not to this magnitude, because I think the NCAA kind of approached this as almost a gotcha moment for Tennessee. But Tennessee was not only ready, but they were fired up and ready to roll and fight back. And I mean, again, if I'm sitting in those rooms on the Division I council, I'm sitting there. I wouldn't be doing this if I knew the backlash and everything that was about to happen. So, what comes of it, we'll see. But I wouldn't have done it.
I'm going to turn this into my own mailbag podcast. Here's
ahead.
the question I have, and maybe I'm stupid. I don't know how the NCAA makes their money. I don't know what they have to do with major college football that makes it worth having to handle major college football. Like they don't do the playoff. They don't have their name on the national championship trophy. I don't understand. It's not like the NCAA tournament at the end of the basketball season. They're going to run this thing. I don't understand why they would even, in the first place, in this NIL era and the transfer portal and all this stuff, would want to try to manage this and try to regulate this, because it seems like a massive headache, and I don't know what the gain is, but maybe I'm stupid to the way they do their business. I don't know.
Well, I wonder and I think it's a good question, and I wonder if it's this, Rob, when you look at the NCAA, if football were to break away, the follow-up question is going to be, does basketball follow suit, right? Does basketball go with football? Because football, for most college campuses, football is the bell cow. We all know that. If the NCAA loses basketball, they're out of business. Financially, they're out of business. Now, the problem with that is that also means the College World Series and baseball's in trouble. So is the softball College World Series, wrestling, swimming and driving, track and field, because it's this multi-gazillion-dollar basketball tournament at the end of the year that funds the NCAA. And so I wonder if they're like, all right, we got to manage football, because the last thing we want to do is, if football breaks away, does that potentially put basketball in the crosshairs? And look at that, because if we lose basketball, we close our doors. We don't just stop investigating or enforcing. We're all out. We're done, because we don't have the financial means to support ourselves and what we've supported in championships. So we'll see what happens with that. I do find it interesting also, Rob, that they're reportedly looking into 12 to 20 schools over NIL stuff. Not hearing a lot of basketball schools being looked into. Little selective investigation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything to add on that end, but I mean, we've talked about it before. I don't know if we want to open up the rabbit hole, but I mean, football's got to break away, doesn't it? I mean, eventually, we've been talking about it for well over a year. I mean, I think we've been talking about it since, early in the NIL space. I don't think it's going to be strictly because of NIL, but NIL is going to be, one of the big reasons, in the bed of the pickup truck that college football, or at least, the top 40, 50, 60 teams are going to eventually break away and be like, the English Premier League or the NFL or whatever. And I just think that's inevitable. And I think this court case we're all talking about is one of many steps down that road. And leading up to that, however, I just feel, again, this is a million miles down the road, but I mean, I think at some point in time that's going to affect those schools and the basketball programs. I don't know what that looks like, but I mean, I think the NCAA had better tread lightly.
Oh yeah,
no,
big time, because they're making a lot. That's where they're making their money there. And again, I think that this is the reminder of, do we really want to try to go backwards and retroactively do something, or do we want to have some conversations moving forward and figure out some way to create some compromise and create a way to make this work where we solidify our positioning a little bit, for a while longer before football just makes a clean break of it all.
Well, and here's why. I mean, there's basketball is a big money, and it's a huge money maker for the NCAA, and it's a big money maker for schools like Tennessee and Texas or whatever. Hubbard, these numbers better than me, but I mean, football. I think, or I'll look this up for something. I think football made 32 million at the end of the year in revenue, and basketball made like 6 or 7. I mean, basketball's profitable, but it is dwarfed compared to football. And I think Tennessee's probably pretty typical of what you're seeing at this level. I mean, yeah, basketball makes $5, $6, $7, $8 million a year, and that's about a fourth of what football.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, basketball is the only bell cow financially that the NCAA has. Because
my point being, basketball is a big money maker, but it's dwarfed. By football, and so I mean, all these there's a lot of schools that have big time basketball programs making big time money, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to what they're making in football.
Last one here from Nashville 615. Said a lot of national podcasts have been talking about National Signing Day or the portal window moving. Is that a change that happens this year? I would never say never, Brent, because everything that's going on right now, but I would imagine that's not going to be this year. But I mean, at some point they've got to address that to where, excuse me, you move early National Signing Day or you adjust those portal windows to alleviate the month of December.
Well, I wrote about that, on Wednesday, and wrote my calendar. I don't think anybody at the NCAA has any care what my calendar looks like. Grant,
did they link it? Is that their calendar, Brent, that they link to the media or no?
Yeah, no, that's the one that I was like, well, I have no prep to get ready for National Signing Day, so let's write about the fact that the February National Signing Day is completely irrelevant and is not a factor. I think 9 of the top 300 in the On3 rankings were not signed heading into signing day, but I think 6 of them were already committed somewhere and had been committed somewhere for months. So, it's going to have to be addressed. But the biggest challenge, I don't think the portal window changes. I don't see how you change the portal window because of the way the academic semesters fall. And I don't know that you can I don't know that anybody wants to force a kid to stay through the spring, right? I mean, granted, if you're a college football coach and you got 10 kids that want to leave your program, do you want to have to try to manage them for 5 months because they can't leave until they get to May? I don't know that that's healthy for anybody involved in that situation. So I think the December portal window changes. So you got to alleviate the high school recruiting pressures in December to make that month more manageable with all the playoff stuff out there.
I think the windows are too. I think they're too large. Like, I mean, was it 45 days, Brent?
Yeah, the December one's in my opinion, is too big.
So cut that down to 30, and then for the coaching cycles and the kids, players, coaches leave, all that. Instead of having it 30 days, man, cut that down to 15. I mean, you're in no man's land at that point anyway. You don't need 30 days.
Yeah, I disagree with you on the 30-day deal when a coach leaves, because I think the new coach should have an opportunity to recruit and keep those guys. Okay, so let's say a coach leaves. And anybody who's been a part of a Tennessee search knows that they last longer than 30 days at Tennessee for whatever reason. But Grant, you got to give the new coach an opportunity to save or convince some of those kids to stay. And if you shrink that portal window from the time the coach leaves, it's not when the coach hires, it's when the coach leaves. Well, if it's a 2-week window and it takes you 10, 12 days to hire a coach, it's pretty impossible to hold the roster together. So I think you got to keep that at 30 days because I just think that it doesn't give the new coach a real chance to hold a roster together, in my opinion. There's only a handful of those instances happen. I mean, it's not like that affects everybody. The problem is the December portal window so long, Grant.
And if you move the December portal, if you change the dates or whatever, that's still the entire month of December is going to be, well, if this player leaves, these schools are going to be interested in this player. It's going to be all the same talk. It's just going to be talking about hypotheticals. Like people, players' names are out there who, we think might transfer, or we think might enter the portal. And if they do, this school is going to be interested. That stuff happens. It's just not official until the portal's open and they've submitted their paperwork. And you can't really officially talk about it until their name's in there and all that stuff. But I don't think anything changes there. They're just kind of stuck a little bit longer. They're still going to be the same. This player's gone and this player's going to be recruited by so-and-so schools, regardless of if they can actually submit the paperwork and leave just based on the dates and the portal opening. But maybe shortening it would be the easiest solution, just to kind of try to get your arms wrapped around December a little bit.
And then maybe if you are one of those rare circumstances where a coach leaves or whatever, you can jump in the portal as soon as the coach leaves. But once a new coach is hired, then the clock starts for maybe 15 days. to kind of bring it to an end. I don't know. But a lot of that's got to change, in my opinion. Let's go to Nick D. Grant, we'll stay with you. How many Vols do you think get drafted in April? Grant, I would imagine that Joe Milton's drafted, Jalen Wright is drafted, Kamal Hadden is drafted, maybe McCallum Castles is drafted late. But
yeah, those are the names that came to mind when I read that question. Jalen Wright and Kamal Hadden, I think, first in terms of the names that came to my mind. What I've read kind of about Joe Milton post Senior Bowl is maybe as early as the 5th and late as the 7th, and maybe a priority undrafted free agent. I'm not sure what to think about McCallum Castles yet at this point, but the names you mentioned are the names that came to mind, and I think Jalen Wright's obviously should be a lock to get drafted. I think Kamal Hadden will get drafted, but outside of that, unless I'm missing some names, you're just kind of watching Joe and McCallum after that.
I don't think he gets drafted. I bet you Aaron Beasley makes a team.
I like that.
I don't think he's going to get drafted either.
Too small.
Yeah, but my question with Aaron Beasley is what position is he going to play in the NFL?
Special teams, outside. I mean, I just think he sticks somewhere. We'll see.
You're going to be our R3 on kickoff team. Come on down.
Just a really productive player in the SEC for multiple years at a tough position.
There is something to be said in the NFL for being able to play maybe multiple positions, even if you are a tweener, because it's a 53-man roster and you've got to bring value. If you can play all 4 special teams and find a way to help provide some depth defensively, you're worth having on a roster, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, especially like those camps, mini camps, training camps, and everything.
Right.
And then that's the best you could hope for, because then you say, at least I have a shot to get on tape, show somebody something. If I get cut, we watch Hard Knocks. If I get cut here, somebody else could pick me up. So, I would agree with that.
I think too. The other thing is, how much has Tennessee's reputation improved with NFL scouts and NFL people because of the success some of these guys have had in the last few years? I don't mean the drafted necessarily success. I mean, someone's been drafted, but how much better does it look defensively because of what Alontae Taylor's done? Obviously, he was drafted, but what Byron Young does. I mean, is there a notion that says, hey, they know how to play, they know how to be a pro when they're coming out? Does it give you a better opportunity because of the reputation Tennessee has created for themselves, in particular on the defensive side of the ball? Even though there's all the talk about offense, but Tennessee's had some defensive guys that have exceeded some expectations, in my opinion. And I wonder how much that helps the reputation for some of these guys to get a shot on a practice squad somewhere. Theo Jackson comes to mind, right? I mean, that's a guy that kind of bounced a little bit and lands with the Vikings. I wonder if that helps, get a guy an opportunity like an Aaron Beasley, more of an opportunity because of what other Tennessee players before him have done under the staff.
All right, we'll hit on this one before we get a word from our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions. Brent, we'll stay with you real quick. Austin Price dropped the note on the board a couple of days ago now, but about Rodney Garner sticking here after a run from Auburn. If say hypothetically, if Auburn were to have hired Rodney Garner, would Tennessee promote from within with a capable guy in Chop, or how would you see that situation, that hole in the staff being filled if Rodney Garner were to have left? But again, it looks like he's staying.
Yeah, Chop makes a lot of sense because of his reputation in recruiting, his relationship with guys on the current roster. I think there would be an internal push by a lot of those guys for Chop to be the guy. I think if you're Josh Heupel, you would have to look at all fronts, what guys are available out there. That do you have a tie to somebody else somewhere along the way? Does Tim Banks have a tie to somewhere? Where would Tim Banks be in terms of what does he think about Chop, and where does where would he fall in there? Because that's going to be that would be a Tim Banks decision. He would be very hands-on and very involved in that one. And I think he's very comfortable with Chop. I think everybody in the program is, because I think he's, again, has done a lot of great things, a lot of things to not only help in recruiting, but to help, the development of some younger guys in the program, an extra set of eyes, a sounding board, if you will, at times. A little bit like what we saw with Kelsey Pope and Jalen Hyatt and some of those young receivers there when he was in an off-the-field role. I think you can make the same case for a guy like Chop.
All right, we'll come back. We got plenty more questions to get into here on today's Thursday edition of the podcast. But first, a quick word from Mort Packer, presenting our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions.
It's one of those phone calls that you hate to get from your kids. Hey, Dad, a tree fell on my house. Well, we got that call a couple of weeks back from our daughter at her house here, and the first call that I made was to Exterior Home Solutions. The peace of mind that they gave me and us as a family when they came out here and came up with a plan, got us connected with the right people, is absolutely priceless. Use the same people that I use. In that time of need, Exterior Home Solutions.
Exterior Home Solutions, that is 865-524-5888 or online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. We get back into the questions. We'll go to Sam Smith 2233 for a couple. First, Rob Lewis, scout on the Fighting Texas Aggies.
Man, I mean, really hard to figure. I mean, I guess not really hard to figure. I mean, Henry Coleman missed a lot of time. You know, one of the best returning guys in the league. So, I mean, I think they have gotten better. But man, not the season that they had thought. Grant, they were picked second, right?
Yes, they were
in Birmingham. I mean, and for that, you know, and again, injuries are a part of it. But they're 4-4 right now in the league. I mean, middle of the pack. I mean, again, 4-4 for them. It's hard to believe, but they've been actually playing, you know, somewhat better here since league play. But I mean, Wade Taylor is a big time talent, but he's also, you know, he's a high volume shooter. You know, to me, he's the kind of guy, to me, that Tennessee has a lot of success against. You know, a guard that really has to create his own shot. I mean, that's the kind of player that, you know, if I'm thinking about Tennessee's defense, that he's the kind of guy that they really make life miserable for.
They slow it down. They slow it down, if I'm not mistaken. And those low possession teams, slower paced teams, are somebody you can get in trouble against if you're not hitting shots, like Tennessee wasn't against South Carolina. South Carolina and Vandy both kind of slowed it down against Tennessee and had some success. So on the road, I don't know if they're going to start 8-0 and then 13-3 like they did at Rupp, but you better have a fast start because A&M's a team that's, you know, Wade Taylor's, he's pretty good. He averages a lot, scores a lot. But you better, you know, on the road, you better have a fast start and kind of slow the momentum because Tennessee went down there last year and it was a struggle for 40 minutes. So you better start fast and just try to find a way to win a road game.
All right, we'll continue on with Sam Smith. Cain, happy baseball season. Do you expect Tony to pair Cal Stark up with an inexperienced starter and put Cannon Peebles with Beam, or how do you expect them to rotate the catchers? Hashtag free homie Chuck E.T. That's a really good question. Last year they tried to have Charlie with Dolander. That was the plan going into the year, and then obviously you had to shuffle some things around as they were trying to figure out who was their catcher going to be. So we'll see. I think it would make sense for Cal to be with some, you know, an AJ Russell or maybe a Derek Schaefer or a Causey or Matthew Dallas. I think that would make a whole lot of sense because of what you said, the experience. He handles the staff well. He knows what he's doing back there. But we'll see. He's going to play no matter what. I mean, if best case scenario and you know, Peebles is catching the way you want to, I mean, in my opinion, Cal's still going to have a start a week behind the plate at minimum. He's going to play a lot. So it just determines on who, or just deciphers on who he's going to be with. And then what are we going to do at shortstop with all the injuries? Do we see Christian Moore at shortstop? And if so, who goes to second? There's a ton of injuries at shortstop right now. Ariel Antigua, thumb injury. Alex Perry, hamstring injury, though I think he's close to returning. Dean Curley, who's been making a push, he's got a bit of a hamstring injury right now. So that leaves you with Bradkey Lowry and Christian Moore. And it won't be shocking whatsoever, in my opinion, if Christian Moore's playing shortstop next week at Globe Life Field, at least for a game or two. If that's the case, then I would imagine Bradkey Lowry's at second base. It'd be those two guys kind of getting a shot at short and the other one playing second. That's at the time of this recording. Things can always change. We'll get a better look this weekend, but less than ideal situations at shortstop right now because of some injuries. I think Perry's close to coming back, but Curley's been sidelined a little bit. Antigua's sidelined, so Christian Moore will get a chance to certainly play some shortstop next weekend in Dallas, in my opinion. We'll move on to Reltney for Life. Two questions. There's a baseball one, so I'll go into that one right now. As we approach baseball season, who might be a breakout player that we might not be expecting? Kind of like Hunter Ensley last year. It's a good question. Maybe this isn't fair because I talk about him a lot, but give me Reese Chapman. He didn't get a whole lot of opportunities last year because it was a crowded outfield. Had a good fall, having a good offseason. Played in one of the better collegiate summer leagues last year in California. Give me Reese Chapman. I think he's going to be a guy that we talk about a lot this season. And then his other question, Brent, do you see any other states joining the lawsuit that has been filed by Tennessee and Virginia?
I don't know. I mean, I think right now a lot of people are just taking a wait and see and kind of go. I mean, Oregon made some news on Wednesday with kind of what they're sort of looking at and potentially looking to do. A lot of people thought Mississippi might jump in. They haven't. They've chosen not to at this point. But I mean, I think every state and attorney generals and state universities are looking to see what happens on Tuesday, and then we'll follow from there with potentially their own legislation and what happens there. I talked to some people and thought, how bad of a deal is this that only 2 states are involved in this, and I was told, hey, it doesn't. From a PR standpoint, perception standpoint, it looks great if there's 12 states, but it doesn't affect the ruling. So it's not a big deal either way. There's no, oh, geez, the case has got issues because not enough states have jumped in and been involved with it. But obviously, from a PR standpoint, I think that, probably looks better if 12 or 14 states are involved as opposed to 2.
Volric says, what do you think about Sankey's comments? And I'm paraphrasing here, quote, we should be focusing on the big realities and addressing them instead of specific matters. Volric says, I took it that he says the NCAA shouldn't be going after individual schools, but focusing on the developing a model that would work in this new era where players are going to be paid to play.
Rob,
comments on that, Brent?
Rob, they should have thought about forward thinking about 2.5 decades ago.
I agree. And I mean, to me, Greg Sankey sounds like just a grown up in the room that, knows what's important and kind of is looking at what's going on with the NCAA in Tennessee is just an exercise in frivolity, like, something that, just doesn't impact where the sport's headed, where college football, like you say, Hubbard, it's something that, it's a storyline from 2 decades ago. It doesn't address what's happening, in the current landscape of college football or college athletics in general. I think Greg Sankey is a great face, a great voice to be kind of leading this thing to whatever it's going to look like next, because, how the NCAA is trying to handle Tennessee and, what's happening in the NIL landscape is just archaic. I mean, it just doesn't work.
Well, and remember this too, Grant. I mean, you've got Danny White saying back in November that, he's all for NIL, but they need some guardrails. They need some parameters. They need some unified legislation of some kind across the board. You got Dondi Plowman in her letter and in her comments that she made the day after the letter, talk about her concern was not just about Tennessee, it was concern for college athletics. And I think you have a lot of people in the world of college athletics that have that concern. Yeah, it affects their own campus, but I think a lot of people who are day-to-day on a campus is concerned about big picture stuff too. And I think that's where the NCAA has missed the boat.
And Hubbard, you've been around. I mean, Grant, I know you've seen Mr. Sankey at SEC, media days or whatever. I mean, he's a guy that legit. I mean, I think he's fantastic for this because he's negotiated, $100 million contracts with ESPN, and he can also, sit down and talk to a 20-year-old college athlete and really. I mean, I've seen him arm wrestle a kid at basketball media days for fun. I think my point being, Greg Sankey to me is the perfect guy to be the face of this.
What he's saying is, speaking of 20-year-olds, he's 20-year-old Grant Ramey who's sitting in his apartment on Laurel Avenue, having parked on yellow in front of his house for the 100th time in his college career. And they put up a no parking towaway zone sign on that yellow at some point after the time I parked there. And then they towed my car away while I was sitting in my apartment. So instead of towing away the cars, how about we just build a garage in Fort Sanders somewhere and help kids and monetize a parking garage and deal with the bigger problem than just one car parked on the yellow.
Hey, Grant, not only did they tow your car away, you got like 60 retroactive tickets for where you parked there for the,
right.
the previous 2 years before the yellow.
Yeah.
And I had to ride to Greenville to get the car out of the impound.
It's a great analogy. It really is. I mean, that's exactly. I mean, fix it moving forward, because again, the toothpaste is out of the tube. Stop trying to put it back in. It's not going to go in. It's just not going to happen. So focus on fixing what you have in front of you, cleaning it up, moving forward, and not what you're doing right now, because what you're doing right now doesn't doesn't affect the future of college athletics. I mean, do you think at Florida State they're doing no NIL stuff now because they just got punished? That Florida State's like, oh, we're out of NIL. We just no. I mean, it didn't. I mean, yeah. I mean, okay, thanks. We'll see you. All right.
It really just makes the NCAA look comical and out of touch. I mean, to me, and I mean, we're all super close to the situation, but I mean, I feel I would think this way. I would think if it was Texas and not Tennessee, and we were looking at it, from the outside looking in, it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't think anybody that does what we do, that follows college athletics this closely, thinks that this deal with the NCAA and Tennessee is going to come to anything punitively for Tennessee.
Well, to continue the analogy, you don't stop trying to park your car. You start trying to park your car where it'd be really hard to get a tow truck in there to get your car out of there, because that's what you got to do. You got to keep going. You got to find some way to get it done.
Well, having a good day.
Yeah, and Eric, the thing too with the NCAA is, and this is the hard part of the NCAA, is the problems that Texas, Tennessee, and those schools are dealing with aren't the same problems that Duquesne's dealing with, okay, or that Creighton's dealing with, or that and that's the problem. You have so many universities under your umbrella, and I don't even know what the number's up to now. But there's a great, now with NIL, the separation of the haves and have-nots has always been there. Now it's greater, because what Tennessee's dealing with, in Florida and the Power Five big boys, and I think that's why you have the SEC and the Big Ten merges. Like, hey, nobody's hearing us, because the NCAA is gathering up a bunch of smaller school ADs, and they're working on stuff. Like, hello, we're the ones. Our situations are different than their situations. Man. And I think the NCAA has missed a boat on that.
And there's even a divide in the Southeastern Conference. There's an upper echelon, and then there's teams that are very much higher than Duquesne, but they're very much lower than that upper echelon. So there's a divide in the SECs.
Just say it, Eric. There's Vandy.
Then there's Vandy and other schools. All right, let's move on here. Let's try to get a couple more. Andrew Aiken's got a couple of questions. All the freshmen linemen redshirting ? Would any of those guys be ready to contribute by providing depth? Brent, if I'm off the top of my head, there's only 3 offensive linemen that were signed in last year's cycle. All 3 of those guys are going to redshirt. Bison Lang played in 3 games. Aiden Bustle didn't appear in a game, and Sham played in 3 games. All those guys are going to redshirts. I'm not forgetting anybody, am I?
Yeah, I wonder if he means the new guys coming in.
That's what I.
Oh, well, that would make more sense. See,
yeah. Here's what I would do. My plan would be to play them all 4 games. I would try to get them on the field. I mean, I'd play them against Chattanooga. Play them, see where they're at. Let them see where they're at. Well, okay, and then when you get on down later in the year, you can decide if you don't want to play them a 5th game or what. But I mean, 4 games. When you get an opportunity to play those guys, you better play them. But why? Because look what you're losing. Okay? I mean, you have to play them so you can see where you're at. So, yeah, Bennett Warren needs to play. Okay? So does Bison Lang. Those guys who redshirted last year. Get them in there when you have an opportunity and see where you can. You all know my soapbox on this deal, so I'm not going to climb completely on it. But you can't spend time in the 4th quarter with your starters to make sure somebody's getting a number. That you hit some stat number. Get those guys on the field, because you've got to be thinking about 25 when you're in those types of football games.
McAllen Castles has now 367 snaps on the season. We got to get Jacob Warren up there before the end of this game. No, get Ethan Davis in there. The way this offensive staff works, you're not have to worry about that 4-game rule. Just whenever an opportunity presents itself, let them play, because chances are, by the time you get to the end of the season, you're not going to go over that 4-game anyway. Who's the favorite to replace Tyler Barron? I feel like we have a good defensive tackles and Leos, but Barron helped make our defensive line more versatile last year. Grant, it's Dominic Bailey, it's Tyree West, Tyree Weathersby, who was injured last year, is going to have a hand in that. David Hobbs could play that, but he's going to be inside. Tyler Barron had a great year last year, but there are a lot of experienced options there that have played a lot and that'll step up and take that spot.
Yeah, experience is the word that jumps out. Guys that have been around. It's not like you're turning into a true freshman who's just showed up on campus and you're hoping that this thing works out. And Tyler Barron had a great, breakout year by his standards and what he had done previously at Tennessee. So that's going to be somewhat difficult to replace. But the names you just mentioned there are names that you think could – maybe it's not going to be just one guy. It's a little bit by committee, but I think you trust the defensive staff, at least the defensive front, that they've been able to produce there, and they'll continue to produce with or without Tyler Barron.
Yeah,
Weatherspoon was going to play last year, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, at least it felt that way early. He created a lot of buzz before he got hurt. So I mean,
going to be a part of the rotation.
I just think that's a guy people have kind of forgotten about, but who was impressive in the little action he had before he got hurt.
And he'll be on kickoff team. He'll play special teams. Dude's an athletic freak. I remember him coming up as a recruit. He's one of my favorite guys in that class.
Fascinating to see him this spring, to make sure that hip's 100%. And everybody says it is. Hips are a little bit different from an injury standpoint. Not the most common thing.
Making it all about himself, Eric. He's making it all about him.
No, you just want to see. You want to see how he responds to physicality. I have no reason to believe that he won't. But that is that's a little bit different than a shoulder rebuild or recovering from a knee injury, because that's not the most common injuries in the world. Hip injury.
Rob, if we can get Tyree Weathersby up on a roof, then I say he's good to go.
Or water skis.
Let's stay focused. The analogies are about me today.
All right, Grant. Is there a similar position to the defensive backfield this offseason, who takes on a youth takeover? Meaning that there should be some young guys that play in the defensive backfield. He said, I feel like we're starting to recruit at a higher level. Could that cause some older guys to move on? Other position groups you can see more youth playing.
I actually was trying to think about this before we started recording, and I don't know that anything compares to the overhaul that's happening or has happened in the secondary, because it feels like, at running back, I guess Dylan Sampson, he's relatively young, but it feels like we've seen quite a bit from him the last 2 seasons. It's just a matter of he's got to be the guy, and he's got to make a pretty huge jump to be that guy, that Jalen Wright sophomore to junior year jump, I guess. Wide receiver, it's a lot of the same guys back. Offensive line, it's been a lot of the same guys back that chose to come back for 2024. Linebacker maybe would be that if Cam Peely wasn't back, because he's that veteran guy. So I don't know that any Hubs, maybe if you have one, but I don't think anything jumped off the page to me that compares, just because of how kind of overwhelming it feels like in the secondary.
Well, nobody's losing that many guys who play
Right.
the volume of snaps that they play. Now, what's that receiver spot going to be opposite of Brew McCoy, right? I mean, who's going to be? Is that going to be Nimrod Webb? Is that Brazel? Was Mike Matthews out there? Okay, that's one spot. But when you start talking about the secondary, man, you're talking about star. You're talking about both safety spots. You're talking about a corner spot. That's an overhaul. You really just don't have that at any other position when you look at what is returning. Maybe tight end, because you lost your 2 contributors there, and you're going to play 2 brand new bodies. So there's an overhaul at tight end, but that's 2 guys, not 4 guys. So a little different comparison that way, just because every position but one in the secondary is being overhauled, and Ricky Gibson's the guy returning, and he did not exactly play 400 or 500 snaps last year for you.
187, I think, or maybe that's generous, but yeah, it wasn't a lot.
You got to say that with conviction, so nobody will look it up. Yeah,
184. All right, on the dot.
Yeah. Come on,
Eric's Rain Man. He's memorized snap counts for everybody. The 2 deep on both sides.
Hey, the general's quarters is not going to bother themselves with going to Pro Football Focus to look at that snap count. I can promise you that. Volunteered 87. I personally love Sunday afternoon college basketball games. The Big Ten and some other lesser conferences do. Has the SEC, Rob, kicked around the idea of doing that in the last 10 years, or will Sunday always be a women's basketball day?
I think it's always going to be women's basketball. I think it's. And I'm just speculating. I think it's SEC Network TV related. I think they have that set up, how they want it. And there's still. It's rare, but there's an occasional CBS Sunday afternoon game, maybe the last game of the year. But I don't think you're going to have any desire when you're playing on Tuesdays in this league. I don't think you're going to have any head coaches that go to Destin and say, "Hey, man, we'd love to play on Sunday afternoon," and then have an off day and watch film and then get on a plane and fly to Starkville. I don't think
I need rhythm. I need no Sundays. I need no big Mondays. I need no Thursdays. I'm a creature of habit. That Sunday afternoon Big Ten game, that's great, because that's great prime napping opportunity when that CBS game is on.
Now, I do wonder when you go to 20 teams I will be a little surprised if you don't get some Thursday games, and it's not been that long ago that the SEC did that. I mean, it was within the last 10 years there were some Thursday night games, which was I didn't love it, and I know coaches didn't love it because that didn't mean you got Saturday off.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. One, I'm not sure anybody likes what the ACC does because they play all the time. I mean, they got a Monday night game. They play something on Tuesday. They may play a couple on Thursday. They might have Sunday night. I mean, they seemingly play almost every night. There is no continuity and rhythm when it comes to the ACC schedule, which I'm sure most coaches don't like. Here's the other thing, too. You got the NFL through essentially most of January, right? With playoff runs and everything else. I'm not sure the SEC is real interested in putting their men's basketball programs and games up on a Sunday afternoon when you got the divisional playoff race. I don't think they look at that as prime marketing opportunity for them.
You've thrown away a TV slot.
Yeah. So I don't think they're going to jump into that TV now. Now in February, I mean, it's pretty good. But as you mentioned, Rob, there's kind of been some CBS games late February that's been an SEC game that was kind of a throw-in. Now, I'm sure that's going away now that the SEC is not a part of CBS in any way. But maybe you see a little bit of that late in the year. But I don't know that you're going to see much of that. I don't know that the commissioners got a lot of interest in that because it doesn't brand and market his basketball program particularly in a great way in the month of January in terms of getting a bunch of eyeballs on it.
No, and I think the SEC has a pretty good routine. I mean, you play Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday. That's, I'm not trying to say that it's all about the student athlete because pretty clearly it's not. But that's a pretty good schedule. I mean, and you talked about the ACC. I mean, somebody in the ACC and the Big 12 is getting screwed every week. I mean, you think about you play Saturday and you turn around and you play Monday night, and again, you don't have to do that a lot, but that's tough. I mean,
didn't Virginia do that? I think Virginia did that this week, right?
Well, somebody does it every week.
Yeah, but I think it was Virginia's week this week. I mean, or maybe it was Miami's. One of the two this week did it because it was like even Barnes was at Volquest Monday night. He looked up on the TV. He goes, "Is that game live?" He goes, "What's the ACC doing playing on Monday? Do they have Big Monday?" I said, "Coach, they play basically every night of the week." And he's like, "Oh, geez." Because he's a creature of habit guy, right? I mean, he doesn't like 9 o'clock starts. He doesn't like Tuesday games. He wants to play every Wednesday and every Saturday at 7 if he can. 7 on Wednesday night. He's fine with a day game on Saturday if he can get one.
All right, we'll get to a couple more. I know we're getting a little over 40 minutes here. I'm going to hit the recruiting ones real quick that I got from Matt Ray, who's on the road. Part of Atheron's question, who did UT grab the most momentum with coming out of the recruiting weekend? Leo Delaney, Faison Brandon, Ethan Utley, Cameron Sparks. Matt also noted that they did well enough with Jalen Matthews that he's going to plan an official visit this spring. So those are a couple notable ones. You got Big Ol' Vol 26 asking which of the highly rated offensive tackles does Tennessee have the best shot with landing this early in the process. You've got David Sanders, Juan Gaston, Josh Petty, Jalen Matthews are all guys that Tennessee's continued to have positive dialogue with and are all expected to be back on campus for this spring. I think the conversation when you talk about offensive tackle obviously starts with those three, and then now you can kind of lump Matthews in there since he's been on campus. Vol Nugs 1421, Grant, this is a good question for you. Obviously, players and coaches both want to win the SEC tournament, but is there an argument to be made for losing early and getting extra rest before the NCAA tournament? It's about matchups, but playing all the way until Sunday has got to take its toll. We've seen in recent memory how winning the SEC tournament means nothing for Tennessee. I can at least say in baseball, I mean, you want to lose and get out of there. Like last year, everybody was mad they lost on Tuesday in baseball. That was great for Tony Vitello's club. But what's your take on the basketball tournament?
It's a total crapshoot. Anything March related is a total crapshoot to college basketball because 2 years ago, like you're talking about, Tennessee won 9 out of 10 in the regular season, and then they went to Tampa and won 3 straight. And none of the games were particularly close. They handled Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Texas A&M 3 days in a row, and they'd won 12 of 13. And they went to the NCAA tournament as hot as they've been in who knows how long. They boat raced Longwood in that first round game, made like 13, 14 threes. They couldn't miss a shot. Then they showed up 2 days later and Michigan manhandled them, and they couldn't do anything about it. and they couldn't handle Hunter Dickinson. They couldn't handle, fill in the blank, whoever. And they were gone just like that. And then last year, you finished 4 of 6. The final 10 games of regular season, you're limping into the postseason. You go 1 and done, 2 and done, in the SEC tournament. They beat Ole Miss, and then they got handled by Missouri. And then they were the popular 4-13 upset against Louisiana. And they handled Louisiana, and everybody in the world picked Duke to beat them, and Duke to go to the Sweet 16. And they kind of punked Duke and kind of punched them in the face a little bit. And on they go to the Sweet 16, and nobody's really expecting it. So there's a case to be made that, it's better to get some rest, because if you don't need that tournament championship to steal a bid, whatever, then you can just focus on the tournament that matters. I think the SEC, the coaches want to move that title game to Saturday so that SEC tournament means more on Selection Sunday in the bracketology process. But unless you're just really trying to, add a banner to your arena and it's a big deal to win one, I don't think it's a big deal to get out of that thing and go focus on the real one.
Last question is going to go to Hooker to Hyatt. Who is the guy that needs to win a spring position battle? Preferably a senior that can have a Latrell Bumphus or Theo Jackson type year. Any of those guys come to mind, Brent? They could maybe have a good spring and then prolong that into fall camp. Well, he wasn't a senior, but one of those guys that kind of comes to mind, it wasn't necessarily that he won a battle. It's just he was out there practicing when the rest of the defensive backfield was in slings. That was Tamari McDonald a couple years ago. He took advantage of spring, and then they brought in Wesley Walker, and Wesley Walker never took his job out of camp. But anybody else that kind of comes to mind for you?
Well, I'm curious where they're going to be at offensive guard opposite of Spraggins. Who can run with something there? Is there a veteran guy? Is that Lampley? Is that Curick? I mean, what's going to happen at that guard spot with a veteran guy there versus a redshirt guy, or a young guy coming in? I think that's interesting. What does Turrentine do at safety? He played late at the end of the year. Does he run with that this spring and really kind of turn the corner in terms of consistency? How much more does Jordan Thomas? He's not a senior, but how much better does Jordan Thomas get this offseason? There's a couple of guys there, that way. I don't worry about the defensive line because they rotate so many bodies, so that doesn't really factor, in for me. Maybe Turrentine at safety is a veteran that is going to get an opportunity. We'll see if he runs with that chance, and we'll see where they are at the offensive guard spot.
All right. At a request from Grant Ramey, I already deleted the question on my sheet here. So
you want me to ask it? I can't remember who it was.
I can't remember who it was, but whoever you are, job well done. There was a Toby Awaka question saying that if he was a football player with his soft hands and everything, would he be a great tight end, maybe a Juluis Peppers type defensive end? Grant, what do you think about Toby Awaka on the gridiron?
Cool Hand Dan gets some credit for this question. I think, and he wanted to play football, by the way, and his parents wouldn't let him. He comes from an extremely academic, focused family, I guess. They didn't want the physical rigors of football to be something that he went through. But
because basketball is such a meek sport.
Well, you know what I mean. But I think he's got to be a defensive end, Rob. Would you agree? Because he is so physical,
long.
so
100%.
aggressive. I can see him bull rushing a lot of people. I don't know what his swim move is. I don't know what his speed rush is like. But just the strength that dude has, you kind of got a taste of kind of the streak he has in him at Kentucky when Aaron Bradshaw decided to push him. I would love to see him coming off the edge.
Rob, where do you put Awaka's hands right now?
They're not great, but they're not terrible. This is Eric. This is you won't know who this is. They're not Torrey Harris level, Hubbard. At all. That's flash of the past.
Love me some Torrey Harris, but he was not in there to touch the ball. That was.
I don't think they're. I think they're average. I don't think they're great at all. They could be better, but you watch him when he gets his hands on a rebound, he doesn't lose many of those. Now I understands. Sometimes he doesn't handle a pass or whatever, or whatnot. But if you watch his hands, it's not a problem when he rebounds.
Yeah, I was curious because I'm with you guys. I think he's a defensive end, but Grant, when you look at his growth at the free throw line, guy's got a little touch, right? Like it's not all bull in the china shop, is it?
Oh no, I don't think so at all.
He's got touch around the rim and he can score it. I think his problem is
his footwork.
And he's just still too much in a hurry a little bit when he gets the ball and trying to make the right move and thinking a little bit too much and trying to process. And like when he gets to the free throw line, he's much improved there. I think he's got a good touch around the rim. He knows how to score. He's got a little hook shot. He's got a little different things that he can do down there. But sometimes the entry passes he fumbles away a little bit. But just in terms of like see ball, get ball on the offensive board or on the defensive glass too, like see quarterback, get quarterback, I think today Awaka would be a great defensive end.
All right, had a fun time. Went extremely long on this podcast because Austin Price wasn't here texting me 17 times telling me to end it because he had to have a lunch date with somebody. So
Eric, I got
had
one.
a good time. 50 minutes with Grant Ramey and Rob Lewis and Brent Hubbs. I'm Eric Cain. Thanks so much for being here. Big thanks to our friends Exterior Home Solutions for making all this possible. If you got a need, pick up that phone today for a free estimate, 865-524-5888. Online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. They've been local. They've been trusted since 1999. Again, that is Exterior Home Solutions. All right, we'll come back on Tuesday for the Volquest podcast. We'll stay up to date on everything going on, Tennessee investigation, the lawsuit, Tennessee basketball, Tennessee recruiting with Matt and AP on the road. All that and more, you can find it today and every day. That's over at Volquest.com.